Musician Blakk Rasta has been pardoned and discharged by Parliament for his contemptuous comments a while ago. But that was after he was ordered to appear before the bar of Parliament to render an unqualified apology. Reasons being he did not show any remorse and only apologized after the tape was played. Other than that, multimedia was not proactive enough to get Blakk Rasta to be measured in his comments. Earlier, WHO scientist Professor Dodo has been pardoned and discharged by Parliament. The Privileges Committee of Parliament says it took note of his apology on different platforms before and after his appearance before them. There are people and members of Parliament who said the Parliament has been too hard on this matter. But what does the Constitution say about all of these? We'll find out shortly on today's big story with me, Aisha Ibrahim. The last time Professor Dodo appeared before Parliament, he apologized to the Privileges Committee, after which members of the committee were expected to grill the professor. But Chairman of the committee, Barton intervened with an explanation that since there has been a formal apology from the professor, they had to end the proceedings. Now let's listen to the committee's recommendations through Chairman Barton.
The committee, having carefully considered the matter in the light of the totality of the evidence gathered, concluded that Professor Dodo was indeed in contempt of Parliament for the remarks he made, that honourable members were commenting on issues out of ignorance, and that if honourable members had no knowledge on the subject matter, they should shut up. The committee, however, took note of the fact that Professor Dodo had taken steps to purge himself of the contempt by profusely apologizing on a number of occasions on different platforms, including the committee's platform and the media. Accordingly, the committee recommends that the House accepts his unqualified apology and discharge him. Meanwhile, the committee calls on the TV3 network and indeed all media houses, both print and electronic, to ensure that their respective platforms are not used to denigrate Parliament, as such conduct would be made to attract appropriate sanctions.
On the path of Blakk Rasta, he was made to appear before the chamber and is in the midst of parliamentarians. In the middle of that chamber, he was asked to render an unqualified apology. Now, Blakk Rasta told parliamentarians that throughout his sitting in Parliament, he has been crying in his stomach. Let's listen to Blakk Rasta apologizing to members of Parliament.
Buying it or selling it,
yes,
but he's engaged in activity that
and therefore, Mr. Speaker, this is a strict liability. Anybody else you see mining, you go to him and say, where is your license or permit? If he doesn't produce it, the identity of illegal mining, it doesn't arise, Mr. Speaker. What it is that if you go to the person and says, here's my lease, then you say, okay. If you go to him and says, here's my permit, then you say, okay. If he doesn't produce it, then you say what you are doing is illegal. Then you point to him and say, arrest him, then you take him away.
Sorry, what of a situation where any other matter will be out of order?
Welcome back to today's big story. We're looking at two people who are said to have made contemptuous comments about Parliament, and they were brought before the Privileges Committee. Both of them have been pardoned now. Before, Professor Dodo was pardoned, whilst Blakk Rasta was asked to face the bar of the House, meaning he will be in the center of the chamber to render an unqualified apology. On the line now is Atachia. He's a member of Parliament and also a legal practitioner. Good evening. Many thanks for your time, Honorable. Hello, Honorable Atachia. Good evening and thanks for your time on today's big story. There seemed to be a problem with the line, but let's listen to Blakk Rasta on the floor of the chamber rendering apology to members of parliament.
I would like to say that if there was an art to read the mind's construction on the face, you would have known how much my face is bleeding by now, honestly, because this is not what I stand for. I stand for development. When Barack Obama came here, I sat with him. Honorable. Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker. Order. 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 Yes, continue. Mr. Speaker, all I want to say is that, very honestly, if I could take a slap from everybody here, I would willingly do it. I am very, very sorry for those utterances. I have never stood for anything like that. And unequivocally, I will say very, 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 to the umpteenth time, sorry. I am very sorry, sir.
That was Blakk Rasta apologizing to members of parliament. Now Atachia is back on the line. Good evening. Many thanks for your time on today's big story.
It's my pleasure.
Well, your committee has recommended that Blakk Rasta, or it recommended earlier that it appear before the bar of the House and also apologize to the House before he could be set free. On what basis were you asking for that?
On the basis that the power is vested in Parliament by the Constitution to commit for contempt and punish for contempt. So it was a very kind, if you like, committee, privileges committee, that made that recommendation to the House floor that they should deal leniently with the gentleman. That's what happened. And I think the House adopted the committee's report.
On the floor, you asked for stiffer punishment even before he was made to come and apologize on the floor of the chamber. Why were you asking for stiffer punishment for him?
Well, there has never been any outrageous statement that I've heard in my life. Now, for me to even say that about 80% of the good people who work for Joy FM smoke weed, just do a reverse logic. Then you see how outrageous some positions can be. And therefore, if you got a man who was so careless with his behavior, an apology will not suffice. And that is why I said that you've scandalized the whole of Parliament. And who smokes weed and who does not smoke weed is in the minds of, people who might not really verify some of these issues, or they are untutored in some of these areas. And you've cast a bad slur on that House. And therefore, if you are not careful, you think that say what you want to say, come to Parliament, apologize and go. It's a very bad precedent.
Honorable, two people have made contemptuous comments and both of them have apologized. Apology is apology. Isn't it fair that you discharge both of them, but rather you asked one to come in the middle of the House while discharging the other to go just like that?
Well, the gravity of the contempt, if you measure it properly, is different, with all respect to you. You see, one says probably Parliament is ignorant. What he meant was that Parliament is ignorant when it comes to Ebola issues. That could be pardonable. But if you say that 80% of members of Parliament smoke weed, my dear, unless maybe you don't want to understand that means you are imputing criminality to the members of Parliament, because weed smoking is a criminal offense. That is a very serious matter. You see, we are not saying that we want to shut the mouths of people and that we are immune from criticism. No, there's no arm of government which is immune from criticism. But let criticism be constructive and let language be temperate. If not, then it's like we disrespect the institutions and we expect them to serve the country. we'll be working disasters if everybody believes that members of parliament are weed smokers.
The contention is that, your committee said Blakk Rasta did not show any remorse, even when he appeared before the Privileges Committee, and you were comparing to Professor Dodo, who apologized on other platforms even before getting to the House. How did you measure the level of remorse in both of them?
The level of remorse, for instance, will come when you readily concede some of the allegations, some of the things that are attributed to him outside the House floor. He didn't want to accept them. You see, it is so obvious that when somebody has a contrite heart, he'll come and tell you that I'm sorry about what happened. But when they confront him with what he has said outside before the committee and he's still standing his ground, that means that you don't care. Until finally, they brought him to this kind of humiliation.
And so how satisfied are you now with this apology? Because looking at his apology at the Privileges Committee and that of what he made, the apology he made on the floor of the chamber are similar.
Well, I do not think there's any point to talk about satisfaction. How has Parliament been hallowed by what took place? We are not, excuse me to say, people who can be massaged to be happy. We are more mature than that. We are talking about institutional disrespect. That's what we're talking about. So therefore, we want the signal to go out there that we are not saying don't criticize Parliament. But please, if your attacks are scurrilous, abusive, and if you make criminal imputations to members of the Parliament, some of them very innocent, they've never touched weed before, they don't know even the taste of it, you could be dealt with. That signal is what is important, not that you see somebody in prison or otherwise.
Bottom line of this whole thing is to for members of the public to be very cautious about the things they say about Parliament. But what does the Constitution say about all of these and the standing orders of the House?
The Constitution says clearly that when you lower the dignity of Parliament and conduct yourself in a manner that affronts the dignity of Parliament, you are in contempt of court. It's all clear. Articles 122 and 123. You can read it for yourself. That is to say, it is not Parliament that conferred any right on itself, but the Constitution. And bear in mind that it is the Constitution that has given us this arrangement where we have a president, and we have the judiciary, and then we have the legislature. So if you don't like this constitutional arrangement, then you need to tear the Constitution into pieces. So where the Constitution has given power to the press, nobody can take away that power from the press. It says that every power should be exercised responsibly. That's all we are saying. But we are not trying to say that, oh, never say anything against Parliament. We are not above criticism. That's why the media is also there as the fourth estate of the realm and also a watchdog over the Constitution to see how we respect the Constitution.
There are people who feel that you are overstretching this matter and explaining that what constitutes contempt is not clearly defined by the Constitution. You want to highlight or explain to us what really constitutes contempt? Well,
I think the Constitution's words are not, excuse me to say, encoded language or esoteric language. It's all clear. You don't need even to have the training of a lawyer to appreciate what the Constitution says. But if you have some space, I could just quote what the Constitution says for you to just appreciate it for yourself. It's so clear here, and let me quote it. An omission or an act of omission which obstructs or impedes Parliament in the performance of its function, or which obstructs or impedes a member or officer of Parliament in the discharge of his duty, or affronts, and this is where you should know, the dignity of Parliament, or which tends either directly or indirectly to produce that result is contempt of Parliament. So when they say that something affronts the dignity of Parliament, it holds the meaning that you are disrespecting parliamentarians and that institution. So if you say that 80% of the members of Parliament are weed smokers without any scientific basis, as in this case, you have really lowered the dignity of Parliament. And that is contempt. It's not too technical in appreciating what contempt of Parliament is.
Does the Constitution prescribe sanctions for offenders?
The Constitution does not, but the Parliamentary Act does. That you could be sentenced by Parliament.
And so if this statement was that grave and puts members of Parliament in this kind of image, a bad image, why did you consider an apology rather than sentencing?
Well, they believe that when you have powers, you should be cautious how you exercise it. So sometimes some people have powers and they are very, very aggressive in ensuring that the powers are exercised. Others too will always give signals that, look, I'm giving you a window of opportunity to, as they say, purge yourself of the contempt, or otherwise I'll deal with you. And that is how it goes sometimes. So we shouldn't be seen as, a bunch of, excuse me to say, wicked and vindictive bunch of members of Parliament. So you can give a window of opportunity to the general public to come to terms with what is contempt and say that, well, we've dealt with some people supposed to warn you of some of these behaviors, but in future we won't take only to acts which have the tendency of affronting the dignity of Parliament.
Going forward, what should guide us in making statements about members of Parliament?
Going forward, what should guide everybody, not just members of Parliament, is that we shouldn't be abusive of each other. Madam, I can assure you that it doesn't yield any dividend. Your bank balances do not improve if all your culture of communication is insults, scurrilous insults, allegations that you come back with facts. It is not good for the sanity of our democracy. And I wouldn't want to, excuse me to say, give special privileges to members of Parliament. Even as I'm talking to you, if I'm trying to insult your person, it's a low level of culture that should not be encouraged. So for me, my humble advice to everybody is that let's have decent public discourse. Let's have rationality rather than emotions and abuses of personalities, which is not what a nation needs. A nation should address issues. A nation should not, begin to cut down on the reputation and the integrity of others. You don't build a nation with that kind of, mindset.
Well, many thanks to you, Atachia. We're really, really extremely grateful for your time on today's big story. But for those of you who missed what Blakk Rasta said on the floor of Parliament, he has been apologizing. In fact, he was dragged into the floor of the chamber to apologize to members of Parliament. We're just told that he could have faced sanctions of being imprisoned or any other sanction, but members of Parliament were a bit lenient because they don't want to be seen as a bunch of wicked people. So let's hear Blakk Rasta apologizing once more.
I would like to say that if there was an art to read the mind's construction on the face, you would have known how much my face is bleeding by now, honestly, because this is not what I stand for. I stand for development. When Barack Obama came here, I sat with him. Honorable Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, all I want to say is that, very honestly, if I could take a slap from everybody here, I would willingly do it. I am very, very sorry for those utterances. I have never stood for anything like that. And unequivocally, I will say very, 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 to the umpteenth time, sorry. I am very sorry, sir.
Let's look at the argument that ensued on the floor of Parliament before Blakk Rasta was dragged to come and apologize. Let's listen to some MPs.
We have come, to some of those things. Professor Dodo also went on a few radio stations and then apologized on it. And upon once you are doing certain things and somebody apologizes on the issues, the best thing to do is also take the apology in a good faith.
Speaker, Parliament is an institution that is to be protected, to defend the democracy that we all agree to embark upon. And so, never in the history should anyone decide to take us to this level that we have found ourselves today. I believe that we are men and women of integrity.
Story, we are back with Joy News Interactive.